All right. Well, I wanted this picture on it to start, just for the people listening on YouTube. This is the wisdom Jesus. His Aramaic name was Yeshua. And what's going to uh, follow is um, my rendering from the Aramaic of the eight Beatitudes of Jesus from the Gospel of Matthew. And it really lays out a path of how human beings can become wholly ripe, totally ripe. That Jesus was probably the first guy that we know of, the first person we know of who had a non-dual perspective on uh, reality, at least in the Middle East. The Buddha we know had it 500 years earlier. But when Jesus came along, he had a very different view of the relationships of human beings to each other and also to the sacred. And always, I have a little uh, placard there that says "not two." That's what non-dual means. Now, part of the problem for 2,000 years of Christianity, we tried to understand a non-dual teaching with a dualistic mind, and that is will explain a lot of the misconnection. And even despite all the things we've talked about in the last couple of talks about how Jesus managed the original wisdom teachings managed to get more and more obscured by empire, by lots of things. Uh, Still, it's there, and there were great non-dual teachers in the traditions in both the Catholic and the Protestant, and even the other a spin-off of the original Jesus teachings, the Quakers, Mennonites, all these brilliant people. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to uh, just read so it hits your ears the my renderings of the eight beatitudes. And again, blessed are the poor in spirit, for they shall inherit. They shall be in the kingdom of heaven. That's how it came down to most of us, with a little bit of change from Elizabethan English. Uh, the word is ripening. Tubeon is the first Aramaic word, and so these are that clicked onto me. Oh wow, these are stages of ripening. Ripening doesn't happen all at once, and it doesn't happen in a linear sequence. So we'll be talking about these stages of ripening, and these are renderings, which means the word to render has interesting uh, implications for what I'm about to do. You can render hog's fat by boiling it down. That's what they call rendering. That's one thing. You boil something down to its kind of essence. You render maple syrup. You boil it for a while, and then it comes down to the thing that we put on our pancakes. But in the beginning, it's different. You boil it down. Also, rendering is a quick sketch of that you could do a rendering and that. And then thirdly, it comes from the word rent, which could mean to in the Gospel of Mark, when Jesus dies, the curtain in the temple that separated the people from the Holy of Holies, the curtain was rent. It also means to open up, to cut open. So all of that was the process for about 9 months that I spent getting these eight sayings boiled down to American English. That meant something to me and still does. And hopefully, uh, may what needs to be heard here on your part be heard. Who knows? Maybe one of them will really uh, connect. And I'm just doing it from my heart and voice to your ears and heart. So if you like it transcribed, what I'll be reading here, just you can just send me an email and just have DWS, Dancing with Spirit, in the subject line. I'll send you these. Okay. So here we go. And to render all these and to make some commentary on them in 45 minutes is going to be a task, but we'll try. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the screensaver now. For those of you, yeah, okay. And just got to mess around with this a little bit. Right? Okay, so I'm going to read these renderings of the Aramaic Beatitudes just straight through, and then I'll just pop back to each one and make a few reflections on it for you, and just don't have to copy it down or anything. If you want to copy, you can. Again, I'll send it to you, but just let it hit the ear of your heart and just see what comes with it. A way of ripening, a rendering of the Aramaic Beatitudes, and then there's a little subtitle there too that this is about. Uh, uh, Not ecstatic states, but it's about altered traits. And so we'll be looking at the traits of how you ripen and how it shows up in a human being. It's not about altered states. It's not about getting high or having visions. Jesus was talking very on the ground that this is what happens as the human traits that get in the way of connecting with the sacred ripen into something else. So here's the first one. And then I'll make the comments when we go back. So I'm just going to read it straight. Ripening are the humble who know in their wisdom that sacred breath is their only possession, and that in this poverty they are fully empowered. Ripening are the wounded who breathe in all the pain and loss and who breathe out simply some sense of relief for themselves and for all fellow sufferers. Number 3, ripening are the fluid who greet whatever arises as the river greets the rock. With easy does it, with around and through, with the gentle way of water. Number 4, ripening are the pilgrims who long for more than business as usual, who are truly hungry for a clearer purpose in life, and who will be satisfied only with the sharing of heaven on earth. 5, ripening are the gracious who birth from their hearts the glowing warmth of mercy and compassion, rekindling again and again that most ancient cosmic fire. 6, ripening are the spacious who were blind, but now can see everyone in the cloister or on the street corner, shining like the sun of the one and only original face. Number 7, ripening are the empty, who can be peace in the very midst of war, who can truly be in the world, but not of it, and who can even become younger with each passing day. And in the last stage of ripeness, and wholly ripe, are the lovers who have dared to dance beyond all social, racial, and national boundaries in joyful service and glorious wedding to the beloved one. They shall disappear without a trace. Right. Those are the 8 stages of ripening. The 8 stages of human traits that, if you have a spiritual practice, it ripens you. It's just the same way a peach. If a peach has sun and a peach has uh, enough moisture and and the right temperature, these elements, then a peach in its own time will ripen into something that's totally ripe, luscious. Well, he's giving us the same, a key to the same stages of ripening for a human being, but minus a spiritual practice of some consequence, like we're introducing here, and we've been doing, at least in this group, for 4 years now. Minus that, it takes a long time. A peach is not going to ripen without sun, without water. And these are the spiritual practices. And he talks about those in the Lord's Prayer, so called. We've been working with those practices. Part of the practice is listening to wisdom teachings like you're doing now. Ripens you. So the first one, ripening are the humble, who know in their wisdom that sacred breath is their only possession, and that in this poverty they are fully empowered. Ripening are the poor in spirit, as it's come down to us. It's gone through a lot of mills till we get to that translation, but it's still pretty good. I'm not saying mine's better than actually the one you have, in your Bible, but it's just different. And ripening are the poor, blessed are the poor in spirit, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. Okay. Uh, this is talking about a different kind of kingdom. So ripening are the humble. Now, humble, just really the words in Aramaic mean grounded. Your feet are on the ground. Humble, uh, humus, the word for the earth itself, they're the same root in Aramaic and in English. So ripening are those grounded people who know this. In their wisdom, he starts out with the wisdom that sacred breath. The word in Aramaic for sacred breath is alaha ruha. Ruha is the same word in Hebrew as in Aramaic. Ruha means breath. Okay, the sacred breath. It really means the holy breath, what we call in Christianity the Holy Spirit. Ripening are the humble who know that in their wisdom that the sacred breath is their only possession. Think of the people in all over the world, whether it's if your house has been bombed, you have absolutely nothing. It's all gone up in flames, or hurricanes, war. Your possessions are all gone. Ripening are those people who know that sacred breath is really their only possession. This practice, this spirit in them, you see. And that in this poverty, in other words, the poverty of, sometimes it takes losing everything. Sometimes it takes a diagnosis. You are ill. Sometimes it takes that to where you realize what really is important. Yeah. Uh, they will be fully empowered because you realize that your power doesn't lie in things or houses or um, prestige or all that stuff. And so that's the first stage to ripening the humble. That was particularly helpful for me because ones on the Enneagram tend to be pretty arrogant. And life will humble you. When your marriage falls apart twice, not just once. It took two for me to actually bring my feet on the ground in terms of my own marriage to Pam. So humble is where it starts. You somehow are brought to ground. Now the next one is, I'll try to give you the King James version so you can see the both. Blessed are those that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Okay. My rendering after sitting with it for about a month was ripening are the wounded, who breathe in all the pain and loss and who breathe out simply some sense of relief for themselves and for all fellow sufferers. Yeah, I think that's, we ripen when these fierce things happen to us. And that's a different idea, in terms of blessing. Uh, Grace comes in two forms, friendly and fierce. We don't tend to think of fierce things like a diagnosis or a hurricane or war. We don't think of those things as those kinds of wounds as blessings. Uh, but they are now. Actually, what finally came out of this in terms of my rendering was something that's very close to describing the Buddhist practice of Tonglen. You breathe in the devastation of for yourself or for somebody else, and you breathe back to the sufferer some sense of relief. I'm doing that for my friends right now, and for the people in the Middle East and the people in the Southeast. You just breathe in everything they're going with. You breathe it into the heart. This is all about the heart. This is about the heart, which is the seat of awareness, which is deeper than thinking. Thinking won't do it. My prayers and thoughts are with you. Well, prayers will do it because that's from the heart. The thoughts, yeah, I don't know what's right. You don't know. So ripening are the wounded. Now the third one is the impossible. I think the impossible beatitude to learn in English. Does anybody know what it is? Just give yourself a little test. You don't have to. Uh, the third beatitude: ripening are blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Well, for one thing, when's the last time you heard meek on the news? Who even knows? Is America meek? So that word needs to be totally, and the Aramaic is very helpful about what Jesus is getting to, and realize, when you get to text, you can see these are stages of ripening: humbleness, uh, being able to grieve your own losses. See, the second one, if you have losses, who doesn't? Ultimately, we'll lose this body and mind, maybe the mind before the body goes. We're all afraid of that, of course. But when we lose everything but the sacred Holy Spirit, or whatever you want to translate that to, that non-material thing that goes on, uh, if you don't grieve the losses as they happen, you become a person of grievance. And that's a kind of poison. And so this is why I'm saying, this is part of ripening. We're all going to get wounded. We're all going to lose shit. And unless you have a practice of grieving, of knowing what to do with them. And I never had 1 second of instruction in grief and how to grieve in my formal schooling. I bet you didn't either. Maybe it happened later. Your wife dies, and so you go to a grief group or something. But this is the most common. This wounding, this loss, is the most common thing that all of us share, whether you're rich or poor, whatever gender, whatever. Pigmentation. We all lose stuff, and we will lose this body and mind, and it doesn't happen all at once a lot of times. And so grieving is key. You know. Ripening are the wounded, because then you can learn how to grieve, because you will be wounded. Now, the third one: blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. It's impossible to understand, or even to say that that's a helpful saying. Well, here's how it translates in Aramaic. In the Aramaic, the third beatitude, water is the image in there. And this is how I rendered it. So ripening are the humble, ripening are the wounded. The third one is ripening are the fluid, who greet whatever arises as the river greets the rock. With easy does it, with around and through, with the gentle way of water. Yeah, beautiful. Meek, it doesn't mean like, oh, all right, you battered housewife, or serf tilling the. It might have come to that. Stay meek, don't raise your voice. Right? No, it's not that. Ripen out of the fluid. So the people go like water. When the United States tried to fight the Vietnamese in the Vietnam War, we were like trying to fight water. We had all this kind of hammer and anvil kind of technique. And these little guys in pajamas with AK-47s or whatever they were, you couldn't find them. This third one is very much uh, captured in Taoism, but Jesus knew it even then. He wasn't going to go up against the Roman Empire. Eventually, the Roman Empire thought he was too much trouble and got rid of him, along with the Jewish temple state, because he was preaching a whole different way of looking at the world. But he was fluid, which is why he was always moving. Jesus himself was always moving, partly because he didn't want anybody to catch him, but also because you go to people. But this idea of, like, if you ever did scissors, paper, rock, if you add water to it, there's no game. Water beats everything. Tell the people in Asheville about that. Tell the people who are denying the climate change. But water is so powerful. And it also goes around with humility too. These things interlock. It's not a linear thing. Uh, Water will seek the lowest place, not the highest place, you see. And also, every river knows how to get to the sea. We've dammed up the wild rivers. Not going to last. We're already seeing what the problem is with that. We dammed it up to use it. We're trying to. That's all right. Get electricity. That's fine. But the water has a wisdom. This creek out here, uh, Buffalo Creek. It goes into the Beach Fork River. The Beach Fork goes into the Salt. The Salt goes into the Ohio. The Ohio joins the Mississippi. Ends up in New Orleans. It knows how to do that, you see. So this is a Taoist kind of thing. Like, don't push the river. We're mostly water. Why don't we trust that? Why don't we trust that at a deeper level? Not up here. If you're trying to figure out the next step, it's not that usually doesn't work. It's not subtle enough. Ripening of the fluid who greet whatever arises. I send this out to my friend who's just in a real fix. And something arises that she didn't expect. Ripening of the fluid to greet whatever arises as the river greets the rock. With easy does it with around and through with the gentle way of water. The gentle way is in Japanese is judo. Judo. The way is the do, and the ju means gentle. And then in judo, somebody comes at you, a big guy comes at you, you don't try to meet him with force. You sort of step out of the way and trip him, then fall on top of him until he comes to his senses, and there's no weapons, see? It's the open hand. Okay, they got other martial arts that use, throwing stars and nunchucks and stuff, but the original martial arts form in Asia, which Jesus intuited, was you don't meet force with force. You don't meet these surprises, diagnosis of illnesses with the left brain. No, you meet it with something more fluid. That's really what meek means, and it's really connected to both the wounds and each of these and connect. It's marvelous, I think. So the next one is uh, in English. It's blessed are the uh, oh gee, how does it go? Blessed are, I guess they call it righteous. Blessed are the righteous who are hungry for justice. Okay, righteousness gets all messed up with right and wrong and stuff, and I rendered it this way: ripening are the pilgrims. Ripening are the pilgrims. That was something that's come over the years. Ripening are the pilgrims who long for more than business as usual, who are truly hungry for a clearer purpose in life, and who will be satisfied only with the sharing of heaven on earth. Yeah, pilgrims walk away from it all. I mean, I have more than one of my fellow pilgrims who has walked the Camino. They just walk away from their life and just walk a road. They don't know why. They're looking for something. Part of the I think part of this the suicide rate among young people and the oxycodone and all that kind of stuff is they look out at the life that they're being offered in 21st century America and say, is this all there is? So this idea that at some time you become a pilgrim, which you leave home, you leave the comforts of home, you leave the comforts of what you should be doing, uh, as according to our society, which is making money and being more comfortable and having a lot of stuff. That's what he's talking about. You're looking for something more of a purpose, clearer purpose in life. And this idea that to only be satisfied with the sharing of heaven on earth, which is justice. Jesus was interested in justice. And justice means, hey, there's enough to go around. Why are people starving? Why are we making war? Yeah. So and that sort of is a different thing when you go on pilgrimage. You're looking for something that you can't find at home in this culture. Uh, the next one is after the first four, it starts to go into a different tone. So far we have humble, wounded, fluid pilgrims. All right, and now ripening. This one is blessed are the merciful, for they will obtain mercy. That's number 5, and I rendered it like this: ripening are the gracious, who birth from their own hearts the glowing warmth of mercy and compassion, rekindling again and again that most ancient cosmic fire. There's a sense that this all started, boom. The scientists, as far back as they can look, they're talking about a Big Bang. Well, what was before the Big Bang? They don't have any proof of any of that. They barely have enough proof of, via telescopes and all that kind of stuff that something happened. But this is about grace. Ripening are the graces. At some point, after walking the pilgrim road of spiritual practice for a while, the grace starts to penetrate. Because when you walk the pilgrim road, you're leaving your armor behind. There's chinks in this survival operating system. The first 4 are about working with the survival operating system as I see it now. I didn't see it when I wasn't even thinking in those terms, but now we're walking. Grace starts to influence us. It starts to actually get through. Ripening are the gracious, who birth from their hearts the glowing warmth of mercy and compassion. That's what the Buddhists would say. What started it was wisdom and compassion. That's the jewel in the heart of the lotus. Whenever we chant Om Mani Padme Hum, hail the jewel, compassion that's in the heart of wisdom. And so that would be a Tibetan way of saying it. He was talking about, you start to glow with this idea of mercy and compassion. How much of that do we see in the way the world's working now? It's much needed. Mercy, compassion, rekindling again and again that most ancient cosmic fire that it's been there from the beginning, you say. Now the next one, it starts to get less tactile as you go along. Humble ground. Okay, now we're talking about trying to harness that power of the Big Bang. It's in you. The Big Bang is still banging. It didn't end at any point. It's still banging as the universe goes on. You got the left brain says, well, what is the universe expanding into? You don't get an answer with the left brain, but it's the idea that it's up to us. We have that power of the Big Bang in us, and it's more and more about bringing it out. Now, the next one would be this is a key one in both the Buddhist Oxfording pictures and here. This is really a sort of a key one. In English, it's blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. So you wonder, why do we have 2 more? They have 2 more after this point in the Buddhist Oxfording pictures too. So the original, blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. What more would you need? Well, there are a couple more steps, and in this one, I've got this: ripening are the spacious, who were blind, but now can see everyone in the cloister or on the street corner shining like the sun of the one and only original face. A lot in that. Took me a lot of some time to get that. And now spaciousness. One of Yeshua's great teachings was, don't criticize your brother. Take a look at that redwood in your own eye that's blocking you. You can't even see your brother. Take care, get that out of your eye. That image of, and judgment is always that. But this idea of spaciousness that starts to come into your life from the pilgrim practice. People who talk about walking the Camino, it's just you're walking the road and all you have is the sky, vast landscapes for days. That space starts to change you. And it really, this is an echo of Merton's experience on the street corner in Louisville, where he was just stunned. At one point it all opened up. This idea of, the holy life was behind, in the cloister, behind the walls, and you could find God there, and you couldn't find it out in the city, you see. That's why he left New York. He said, nobody can become sane in a city like this. But then he had this big opening. They call it purity of heart. It just means the heart opened and in like the vision clear, you see. Spaciousness. Ripening are the spacious who were blind, but now they can see. He saw everyone on the street corner at 4th and Walnut. Now it's Muhammad Ali. Same point. We got a plaque there to this thing. To really the ripening stage 6. He saw everyone in the shopping district. He saw them all as brothers and sisters, and he saw that there could be no division. This is when the non-duality comes in, where you just see, saw everyone shining like the sun of the one and only original face. So in a way, this is where you're stepping into non-duality. It's not like, Jesus was living with the temple in the center of Jerusalem was the sacred place that held the sacred. And so people would make pilgrimages to that. And Jesus saw it in every person's face, whether they were Jew or Palestinian or Roman even. Didn't matter. Yeah. So this is really the beginning of the non-dual. And then the next one even takes it to the a little farther. So we got ripening are the spacious. So now this one is ripening are the empty. Now emptiness is this Buddhist concept that even the Dalai Lama said, I saw him talking in Bloomington for 5 days, and he said, emptiness scared me at the beginning. But here's Jesus saying, all right, once you really see that there's no separation between you and anything, well, then let's go a little farther. Ripening are the empty, who can be peace in the very midst of war, who can truly be in the world, but not of it, and who can even become younger with each passing day. Now, there's a lot in this one for me as I get older. It's picking up a lot of things in just a few lines, just this one line of Aramaic, I think. So even after you've had this insight that you're connected to everything, and nothing is foreign. Ripening are the empty, who even get emptier. I once had 12 Tibetans here. I brought them to the school to do their chanting, and they even had the kids doing the sand painting and stuff. That's a whole other story. But then I brought them out here for lunch, and then in the evening we were going to go do their chanting in the cathedral here in Bardstown, St. Joseph's Cathedral. And so they were here, and the old guy who was the leader was actually born in Tibet, walked across the mountains, 4, 5, 6 months with no maps, and he made it. And so and the rest of them were all born in India and are being trained as Tibetan monks. And when they were outside blowing bubbles and running around their outfits, chasing the bubbles with Elizabeth. She was a little girl at the time. I was inside having tea with the old guy. And I've told this story before, but I think it illuminates his beatitude. Uh, and we talked, and I said, well, he had pretty good English. The other guys did not. And he said, well, I was a young boy. They sent me to, I went to Oxford and studied to learn English. And I said, oh, what did you study? And he said, oh, philosophy. And I said, oh, great. I said, what was your favorite? And he said, oh, the existentialists. I said, well, who did you really like there? He said, well, Sartre. Sartre went the deepest. But when he hit emptiness, he thought it was nothing. He's talking about being in nothingness, the famous. And when he hit emptiness, he thought it was nothingness and only came back to the surface. If he had known it was emptiness and kept going, he would have hit the fullness. That to me is an unbelievable understanding of it. You have to be willing to go through the emptiness to hit the fullness. And that goes all the way back to the idea of wounds. And, when you're suffering, you get a diagnosis, you lose your house in a storm, all that. That is that feeling of emptiness where we all try to fill it with something. But if you keep going, in other words, you don't freak out and come back to the surface of things, you keep going, you will hit the fullness. I can remember the look on the guy's face. He knew the territory. And that was the first time I really started to understand emptiness. And when you can truly be in the world of not of it, how can you make peace in the very midst of war? Well, I had something in my latest good news from Gaza. Most of the times it's horrible news because it's what's going on in Gaza, but there's a there's a movement of Palestinians and Israelis getting together in pairs and going around the world and really saying, and until we both have peace and justice, there won't be any peace for anybody. And it's a very, and it's a sense of uh, being peace in the very midst of war. You should check it out if you get it in the email. And there's a trailer for this movie uh, that was made by the director, who's a Jewish lady. She did it RBG. If you ever saw the documentary on Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she made this short. It's a little 40-minute documentary. It's called The Path Ahead. Yeah, and so this is the idea. You just drop the fact of enemy, who can be peace in the midst of war, and these guys are doing it while everybody's bombing and whatever. They're trying to make peace. Who can truly be in the world but not of it? In other words, I don't. I'm wearing a Palestinian keffiyeh just to remind people what's going on, but I'm not against the Israelis, not at all. I want the peace. Yeah, and you got to drop the idea that they're enemies. Our whole politics is like enemy formation now. It will never bring peace, and you can even become younger with each passing day. That there's some of that of William Blake in this, because Blake thought that it was possible for the twice-born man or woman to grow younger and younger and younger while still embracing aging and death. And I think this is what he's talking about. He's talking about this is the real stage of ripening, where even as you're 75 and you're feeling all the aches and pains, and maybe you're hitting, bad knees, all this stuff, but somehow guys like Merton and the Dalai Lama and Mother Teresa, my grandmother, they were all more and more, in a way, childlike, even having all this grievous experience. It's a trick. It's a trick. I don't know what you're interested in, but I'm interested in becoming younger and younger and younger with each passing day. Yeah, well, still not, not investing in all the creams and stuff. I'm not interested in that. They're working on your fears of that, but I don't mind looking old. I don't like to feel old or to think old or to treat people, who are old as invisible. No. Well, here's the last one because we're just about down at the time. So all this leads to this is the ultimate stage of ripeness. Now, when I was a little a little fifth grader thinking I was going to become a priest, I was trying to get ahead of the game. So I was reading all these things, and I remember asking Sister James Adele, because the last one uh, blessed are those who are persecuted in my name, for the kingdom of heaven is yours. And I noticed, oh, that was the same thing that the first guys got. And I remember asking James Adele, I said, Sister, did Jesus just run out of payoffs or what? Because he's repeating here. And I got the standard answer, well, you should never thought about that. She said, well, I don't know, Joseph. That's a great mystery. Let's ponder that. Well, I think that's key to realize because he was saying it's not a straight line. This is a spiral journey, and you will go through these things. All of a sudden you're arrogant again, and then life will wound you and humble you. And so this is not a one-time thing, but the kingdom of heaven that the poor in spirit get, and also those people who suffer for this way, is the same, because there's nothing other than the kingdom of heaven, and that is not later, it is not elsewhere, it's in you, you see. So the way I think the ultimate uh, level of ripeness, holy ripe are the lovers who have dared to dance beyond all the social, racial, and national boundaries in joyful service and glorious wedding to the gracious one. They shall disappear without a trace. That last line is very interesting how that came out. They shall disappear without a trace. Yeah. Uh, this idea of, and then that was Jesus. He was beyond the social, racial, national boundaries. They didn't have a nation. They were an occupied country. Uh, and it came down to love. They said, well, what are the great commandments? What do we got to follow? What's the way? He said, well, love God, so sacred dimension, and love your neighbor as yourself. Because not like yourself, but your neighbor is yourself. There's no difference. And he probably should have put in parentheses, uh, no, with no exceptions. That would be great if he had put that in, or if they had translated in, because you're not gonna become wholly ripe until you, in a way, um, realize that you are love. That's who you are. The Beatles saying, "All you need is love." Well, it didn't quite work because all we are is love. And if you think you need it, you're going to do all kinds of stuff. Try to be president of the United States. Then people will love me. You don't need love. All you are is love. But as humans, and our resistance to it. Jesus knew that. And so, but when you realize that that's who you are, that you are love, social boundaries, racial boundaries, national boundaries. You don't need a nation state. White Christian nationalism. Jesus wasn't interested in a nation. He didn't have those boundaries because borders are places of great conflict. You see, our border is the big issue. All these other people coming in. No, no exceptions. Love the sacred, and then love your neighbor as yourself. No exceptions. That's what he's saying. Then the kingdom of heaven is yours. They shall disappear without a trace, because you don't. I mean, it's if you're a big time lama, enlightened lama in Tibet, the last thing you do is you leave the monastery and you put on rags and you disappear the uh, into the populace, and then you're spreading it there because you're taking it out of the monastery to everybody, and it's this sense of disappearing without a trace. The ultimate Zen accomplishment is to leave no trace, which is very interesting. See, we're going from emptiness deeper even to where you just become love. Love doesn't want anything back. That kind of love. That's what the Greek, the guys who wrote about love in the Greek New Testament, Mark, for instance, and John, love was agape. It was just radiant love, not wanting to get anything back. That's that's a level of ripeness that you can work for. You just trust that if you do these kinds of practices, the peach not thinking about becoming right. It just takes the time that it takes. But that is a kind of ripeness to disappear without a trace. No, you love people just, and you go on loving them when this body and mind goes. I believe my mother was loving me, even though she'd lost her mind. I know she was. Yeah. Well, all right. I think that's good enough for now. And if you want the text of this, just send me DWS in the subject line, and I'll send it to you. Okay.